Hey y'all, welcome to 5-Minute Bible Study, which is more like 7-minute Bible study today. But I'm going to walk you through what I do when I read the Bible. Remember that last week we talked about the foundation of Colossians, why it was written, was to correct false teaching and to elevate Christ over everything and to teach you how to live a Christian life. And I found a better way to say that of just Jesus over everything. Jesus over everything. That's what Colossians was written to teach. And so today, with that filter, we're going to go ahead and read Colossians 1 3 times. First, just to observe and summarize. Second, to ask questions of it. And then third, to apply it to ourselves, not our friends, not our parents, not anybody else, but just us. So let's go ahead and get started. So I just finished my first read of Colossians 1. And when I do this, it's a pretty quick read, but then I kind of go back and just make sure I'm getting everything right. And I'll take a notebook and just write out some notes to myself. And all I'm really doing in the first read, like I said, is observing and really summarizing. I'm not trying to make any points. I'm not trying to really understand it that much. I'm just trying to what's going on for the first read. So what I see is that Paul in 3 verses 8 is thanking God for the growth of the people who are reading this letter. And then in 9 through 14, he's praying that they continue to grow in their faith. And then when we get to verse 15, he goes off on basically Jesus is awesome. Jesus is amazing. Jesus is equal to God. Jesus existed from the beginning. He created all things through himself and through his power and for himself. Jesus holds the world together right now. He's holding it together. Jesus was the first to rise from the dead and go be with God. I think that's what it meant. God dwelled fully within Jesus, and Jesus reconciled us to God. And then Paul talks about from 24 through 29 how he toils and works very hard to make sure that we as Christians know the riches that are in Christ. So that's what I see in the first read. Now I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to be like, what do I not get? What are my questions? So go ahead, read it again, and come up with any questions that you have. After my second read, I have a couple questions. Most of them start in verse 15 when he starts talking about the preeminence of Christ. My questions first off is he says that God created all things through him and for him. All things. And so when I hear all things, my first thought was, okay, well then did God create evil? Did he create, or I guess allow the creation? I guess he did create if he created all things. I don't know. These are my questions. But did he create evil for him? Does it help him in some way? I don't know. And I'm not even going to try to answer it yet, but that's something I will look into and pray about. My other question was, if Jesus already existed, how was he born? What's going on there? I want to look into that. And then in verse 24, Paul says, I rejoice in my sufferings and in my flesh for my afflictions. Because I am filling up what is lacking in Christ's afflictions. So he's saying that Jesus lacked something in his afflictions. And I was like, why does Jesus lack something when he dies on the cross? So those are questions I have. And this chapter is very technical and he's correcting doctrine right here and giving a right view of Christ. So it's very much thinking and correct thinking. So the questions I'm asking are very logical and, heady. And what I'll do with those questions usually is I'll just Google them sometimes, ask my dad, ask a pastor, and then I'll pray about them too. I will honestly ask God, I don't get, why would you create evil or allow evil? And I just pray about it, think about it, search it. And then I usually end up finding really great answers and resources to these questions. But usually in other chapters, it's a little more devotional. So one more devotional question I had was, how do I get God to powerfully work through me? And this comes from the last verse in verse 29. Paul's saying, I struggle with all his energy and that he powerfully works through me. So my question was man, how do I get that? How do I get God to powerfully work through me? So I'll take those questions and I'll pray about them right now. And then I'll go and research a little on Google. And I'll also ask my dad, who's a pastor, and other pastors that I know. So that's my second reading. Now we have one more reading. And in this last reading, we're going to ask God, what do you want me to do from what I read today? What do you want me to do from what I read today? So in my third read of asking, what do I need to do today? And I want you guys to do this too. So make sure you pause and read this for yourself and ask this of yourself before you listen to me. But when I read it and I was reading through, what I saw that I need to do is, number one, I need to pray for the spiritual growth of others. Paul is spending half of this chapter praying that other people grow in their knowledge of God. So I need to do that. And I did that. I prayed for people to know God deeper. Number two, I decided I need to research that evil question, because the question I had from before of why does evil happen in the world? Because I want a little bit of a better answer. I think I have one, but I want to be prepared to give an answer if somebody asks me that question in the future. And then thirdly, what I need to do is I need to ask myself, what riches of God's glory, like what riches have I found in living for God? Because Paul says in verse 27 that we see the riches of the glory of this mystery of Christ in us. So what have I seen that's like gotten me riches from following Jesus? And I thought about the fact, first off, my second chances, the second chances that God has given me and the forgiveness he's given me. It truly is a blessing to have second chances. Especially when you've done some stupid stuff in your life. And then secondly, the blessing I see is an amazing family that was redeemed from some crazy stuff. My parents came from crazy childhoods, crazy childhoods. But they ended up coming together and seeking God and creating a beautiful family. And I don't think that happens without the grace of God. And I have a couple more I wrote down, but those are the two main ones for me. Those are some of the riches I've seen from following after Jesus. So that's what I got from my reading today, and I would love you guys to do that. And we're gonna go ahead and do this the next couple weeks, and I'll probably get a little more preachy, but I just wanted you to see today what I usually do when I read my Bible. I do three readings of the chapter, one for observation, one for questions, and one for application. That's it for this week. I'll see you all next week with Colossians 2.